For many years, from the worst to the best team in the league, everyone put a lot of emphasis on the tactical component. But like everything in this world, nothing lasts forever. And now, football is on the verge of big changes. More and more creatively free players have begun to appear lately, players who go beyond the system. At one time, tactical system football became the only correct choice. Each team knew how to control the ball, how, where, and why to open up, pass, and press. The team also knew how to neutralize its twin brother, the same system team. On the contrary, so when two identical ideologies meet on the field, it's more like a chess game. The players move perfectly as needed, without freedom of creativity. It all started with the position of the nominated playmaker. Almost throughout the history of football, 10s have been an integral part of the playing structure. This is a player who could always come up with a moment out of nothing. Although he did practically nothing in the defensive phase of the game, his benefits in the attacking third outweighed the time. Many teams preferred the 4-4-2 scheme, and the number 10 found themselves practically in a situation where they were given complete freedom of action. Despite the fact that such a scheme it was ideal for teams that prefer to use the 10th number in their game, but at some point everything changed. A defensive midfielder appeared, the Destroyer. For every action, as is known, there is a counter-action. Teams preferring a defensive style found the perfect way to neutralize the strengths of the 10. All that was needed was a playmaker to be creative. And the task of the defensive midfielder is much easier to understand, not to let him do it. In the ways of the Destroyer, designed to turn the life of the playmaker into a nightmare. For thin and very often lazy players, they put a chain dog. Teams playing with defensive midfielders became more successful because two weapons appeared in their arsenal at once. The first, neutralization of the above-mentioned 10, and the second, an additional person helping to play the ball. Now the defensive midfielder gets more freedom because the 10 does not give him enough resistance in pressing. This led to the fact that teams had to abandon the passenger in the center of the field because the opponents were getting too much of an advantage regardless of what magic they did. And although teams with a Destroyer already usually have 3 people in the center of the field, this does not mean that they do not need an additional player higher in the center. Not that it was Pep and Messi who came up with the position of a false 9, but namely how effective it can be. Player in this position, considering that the Argentine scored his 91st goal in this role, and the last thing a team with a difficult 9 needs is a 10. This was the last nail in the coffin for the playmaker. Time changed. Those 10s that were able to adapt moved to the wing or began to act below, and those who could not slowly and mercilessly went into the shadows. Players who used to excite and magic began to disappear abruptly. The entire burden of creativity was almost completely transferred to the wingers. Before, the fullbacks were not as versatile as they are now. They were strong, but not agile. Therefore, fast and agile wingers were elusive for them and gave us a lot of highlights. Initially, the essence of the wingers was simple: to pass the ball down the wing and cross the ball or hang into the penalty area. Before people began to actively take an interest and keep statistics, the winger was allowed a lot. They understood that if they beautifully and effectively beat the laterals, then this would be enough. No one cared about their actions. No one will pay attention to the percentage of successful dribbles. Just as time strangled the dozens, it was time for a gradual extinction and the extreme forwards. For a long time, the tasks of the wingers consisted of attacking actions. Everything changed when more laterals began to appear who were not limited to defensive actions and began to attack more and more often. This required more defensive work from the wingers. Now, they need to act not only in attack, but also go lower to help their team. Therefore, the fast and creative wingers were replaced by more efficient ones. Soon, the idea with 2 forwards began to fade into the shadows. Therefore, the need for constant crossing and simply became less relevant when the central forward became less dangerous. We had to change the functionality. Winger inverted extreme forward, acting on the opposite wing for his working foot, who often shifted to the center to strike. It was during this period of time that we saw an extremely abnormal statistic for wingers. Such a system completely displays the unique qualities of the players, forcing them to act less creatively. At some point, again, changes followed. Teams realized that acting with 3 deep midfielders has a detrimental effect on actions in the attacking phase, so something had to be changed. It was necessary to return the 10 again, but how to do it, since the destroyer was still there? As many as 2 10s came to the rescue, which created a situation of 2-in-1 against the destroyer, giving the team an advantage. The dozens received a new life by finding space between the fullback and the outside center, but this quickly led to changes. Teams began to use 3 central defenders more often, so the midfielders became more mobile. They constantly move, creating an advantage in the center of the field. But even in this case, the opponent knows what to expect. When the players know what will follow, they know every move, every pass, cross, strike, even before it is made. This leads to those same chess games. So there is nothing left but creativity, something that not even the most tactically savvy team can predict. When everyone knows your next move, a burst of genius is needed to get out of a difficult situation. A new generation of playmakers has appeared. Now, they are not squeezed between the lines. They are not tied to the center of the field. From now on, they move along all the width. They can drop lower for the play to be on the flanks of the attack or even in the position finish. But they also learned from the mistakes of the past. Now they handle the ball more carefully and rationally. They can play back if necessary. Also, they are better prepared physically and can fight with the defensive midfielder, which the previous generation simply ate. If earlier playmakers were more focused on assists, now playmakers both assist and score. In the era of systematicity and personal pressure, the answer to all questions, as in any other era of football, is the individual skills of the players. The current generation of wingers not only know how to cross or dribble like the previous ones, they successfully combine the skill of the past and deadly efficiency with the ruthlessness of the present. The revolution in football continues. If teams continue their path of systematicity, the need for players who can come up with something out of nothing will only grow. Because when 2 perfect teams collide that know each other perfectly, you need something more than perfection to beat the opponent. You need magic. You need something non-standard that goes beyond systematicity. And for all football fans, this is a wonderful trend, because in the eyes of the average person, the game will always be above the result.